Chapter 1786. When everyone heard the voice, they turned around and saw him walking over from behind them. They couldn't help but wonder, "Where did you go?" Murong Yi bowed to everyone and continued, "I sent Fengjiu away. Do you all want to go in and see my master? He woke up earlier but fell asleep again because his body is still very weak. Why don't you all come back tomorrow? He should be more energetic tomorrow." Hearing this, the sect master asked, "Your master really woke up? The poison in his body has been cured? Is he all right?" "He's awake and the poison has been cured. His body is still very weak and he needs to rest for a while to recover." His gaze swept over and saw that the doctor from before wasn't here. He said, "I've also let the sect's doctor examine him. Sect master need not worry." "Then why did you let the ghost doctor leave? Since his body hasn't recovered, he should have stayed until he recovers. If he left now and something happened, where would we find him?" The sect master frowned slightly and was a little worried that there would be more accidents. Murong Yi smiled and said, "That won't happen. The doctor also said that the poison has been cured and his internal injuries are also recuperating. What he lacks now is time to recuperate. Besides, Fengjiu wants to leave, so I can't force him to stay. You two come with me to take a look. The rest of you go back first. Don't disturb Lord Yuanqing's rest." As the sect master spoke, he indicated for Murong Yi and the old man beside him to go in with him. Wait, old man, let's go in and take a look too." Suddenly, a voice was heard. Everyone was stunned and turned to look. They saw a figure walking over unsteadily. There was a hint of drunkenness on his face and his steps were unsteady. "Crazy old man? What are you doing here?" one of the peak masters asked when he saw him. The old man dressed in gray who was walking unsteadily glanced at him and smiled with his eyes narrowed. "Of course I'm here to see the Star of Phoenix. Otherwise, do you think I'm here to see you?" Hearing this, the peak master's face darkened. "You crazy old man, did you drink a lot of wine again? You can't stop talking nonsense. Sect master, look at him. He doesn't have the majesty of a peak master from head to toe." "Heh, don't just talk. Remember to find time to send the 10 jars of spirit wine you lost to me." That old man laughed mischievously and walked over to Murong Yi side with swaying steps. "What about Star of the Phoenix? Let me see what he looks like." When the sect master heard this, he was slightly startled. When the old man said that he was here to see the Phoenix Star, he was a little startled. Star of the Phoenix? When did their magnificent immortal sect come to the Star of the Phoenix? Wasn't Feng Xing in the Heavenly Sun sect? Just as she was thinking, she heard Murong Yishuan's voice. "Fengjiu has already left. I just sent her off." "What do you mean? Why don't I understand?" the faction leader asked with a frown as his gaze fell on Murong Yi. "Are you stupid? Since she was already here, how could he let her go? From the looks of it, you didn't tell them that the person who saved your master was Feng Xing?" Crazy old man glared and burped again. He had originally wanted to see what this star phoenix looked like, but who would have thought that she had left? It was rare for him to get a good look at her, but who would have thought that he would miss her without even seeing her? Thinking of this, he shook his head and turned to leave with a lack of interest. "Since she's not here, then forget it. I'll go back and continue drinking." Chapter 1787. He had no intention of hiding it from them. Furthermore, now that the people of the evil sect were plotting against Fengjiu, he hoped that the sect could help Fengjiu at the right time. Murong Yishuan paused for a moment then said, "Fengjiu is Feng Xing. What proof do you have?" The sect leader asked what everyone wanted to know. Murong Yishuan smiled. "Elder Tianji's disciple is very familiar with her. Furthermore, I know that it's her. As for proof, I really don't have it." What he knew, he could not tell them, so he was sure that they might not believe him completely, but he was sure that they would investigate after he told them. "Since you know that she's Feng Xing, why did you let her go? Don't you know that some of the evil sect's forces have been stirring recently? If you let her go out alone and she falls into their hands, won't she be in danger?" The sect leader frowned and said, "She shouldn't have gone too far. Bring some people and bring her back immediately." "That's right. After we bring her back, we can investigate whether it's her or not." A monarch agreed. Let's go. I'll go with you. Another monarch said to Murong Ishuan. However, Murong Ishuan shook his head. It's no use. You don't understand Fengjiu. She's a very independent person. She'll only do things if she wants to do them. We've never forced her to do anything. If she wants to leave, we can't stop her. We won't harm her if we keep her. Another peak leader said. Murong Ishuan smiled and said gently, that's why I said it's no use. If she wants to stay, she'll stay. If she doesn't want to stay, even if we have good intentions, she won't stay. Furthermore, even if we chase after her now, we won't be able to find her. They knew too little about Fengjiu's abilities and they didn't understand Fengjiu's character either. That was why they had said such things. If she was the kind of person who was willing to be protected and had no opinions of her own, she wouldn't be Fengjiu. Hearing this, everyone fell silent and didn't know what to say for a moment. In the end, the sect master sighed and said, then let her be. However, we can't spread this news. Ever since the news of the Phoenix star dominating the world had spread, all the great forces on the mainland have become restless. Some want to kill her while others want to pull her into the evil faction. Even though we've taken precautions, it seems that the situation won't go as we wish. Since that's the case, let her be. Don't worry, sect leader. She's not an ordinary person and won't walk the normal path. You don't have to worry about her. Murong Yi Xian said warmly. The sect master nodded and gestured for everyone to leave. He and an old man beside him went to visit perfected Lord Yuanqing before returning to the main peak. As for Fengjiu's side, it was just as Murong Yi Xian had said. After she had left the Huaxian sect's territory, she took advantage of the darkness of the night to enter the space and changed into a set of green robes. She also changed her appearance slightly. Although she was still dressed as a man, one could no longer tell that she looked the same as before. At this moment, even if Murong Yi Xian were to stand in front of her, he would not be able to recognize that the person before him was Fengjiu. Chapter 1788. After dressing up, she was very satisfied with her current appearance. She was not in a hurry to go out. Instead, she rested in the space and prepared to go out tomorrow morning. The next morning, the sky was hazy. She came out of the space and walked in the mountain forest. While picking herbs, she followed the mountain path down the mountain to enter the city. In the mountain forest in the early morning, birds chirped and leaves rustled. Fresh air filled the forest. Her steps were light and she hummed a little tune. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of a wild mountain pass through the weeds in the forest. She could not help but pause. This is meat delivered to my door. She softly muttered, her eyes fixed on the two wild chickens that passed by. The two wild chickens did not seem to be aware of the danger. After running for a while, they stopped and looked around. They used their claws to scratch the ground as if looking for food. At this time, Fengjiu saw that there was no one around. She took out a black net from the space and walked forward with light steps. She threw the black net in front of her and covered the two wild chickens. Caught! She happily walked forward and caught one of them. She wrapped the other in the black net and threw it into the medicine basket on her back. She found some dry branches and dried leaves nearby and found an open space to prepare the wild chicken. She planned to eat this roasted wild chicken in the morning and at noon. About an hour later, the aroma of roasted meat spread through the forest. After the roasted chicken was cooked, Fengjiu kicked some soil with her feet to put out the fire. She took the roasted chicken and walked along the mountain path, tearing it apart and eating it. This feeling of eating while walking in the forest was very novel. Moreover, she did not have a destination. Her pace was leisurely and her mood was relaxed. Coupled with the delicious food in hand, her whole mood was different. Walking along the path, her hands were already covered in chicken grease from tearing apart the roasted chicken. It could be said that her image was not very good, but she did not care. Until more than half of the chicken was finished, she burped and wrapped the rest up. She quickened her pace and followed the sound of water, intending to wash the grease off her hands. There were no fish in the clear water. The water in the mountains flowed from top to bottom. It was so clear that you could see the bottom. There were only a few fallen leaves floating on it. The water in the mountains was refreshing and refreshing. After washing her hands, she washed her face. She was not worried that the disguise on her face would fall off. After all, if she wanted to remove the disguise on her face and reveal her original appearance, she would need her potion. Phew! I'm so full. She sat down on a rock and took off her shoes to soak her feet. However, at this time, she narrowed her eyes and listened to the birds chirping on the branches. She felt the breath of a stranger. Young man, how can you stick your feet into the water when you're occupying the upper reaches of the water source? Fortunately, when I filled with water, I saw a layer of oil on the surface. Hearing the angry voice, Fengjiu withdrew her feet. She used a cloth to wipe the water off and put on her boots. She turned around to look at the person who came. She saw that it was a man around 35 years old. He was dressed plainly and had a straight face. However, there was a hint of anger in his eyes. Seeing this, she said apologetically, "I'm sorry. I thought there was no one around here, so I washed my hands after eating." Chapter 1789. When the man saw Fengjiu's apologetic expression, he did not say anything else. His face darkened as he scooped up some clean water before turning around and heading downstream. Seeing this, Fengjiu called out to him, "Big brother, please wait a moment." What? The man stopped and turned around to look at Fengjiu with a dark expression. His tone was not very friendly. Fengjiu smiled and said, "I came here to pick herbs and accidentally got lost. I want to ask if there's a faster way out of this mountain forest." The man glanced at Fengjiu and his gaze paused on the medicine basket for a moment before saying, "Follow this water source and get out of the mountain the fastest way." With that, he hurriedly left. "Many thanks." Fengjiu raised her voice and glanced at the water source again. Of course she knew to follow the water source, but how long would it take? Although she was idle now, she didn't want to stay in this mountain forest for too long. She sighed softly and continued to walk down with the medicine basket on her back. She thought that once she left this lush forest, she would be able to fly on her sword. It would save her some time. At the bottom of the water source, the man who had met Fengjiu earlier handed some water to a 50-year-old middle-aged man to drink. He then worriedly asked, "Father, how do you feel? Do you feel better?" "I've rested for a while and I'm already much better." The middle-aged man lightly sighed and leaned against a large tree as he narrowed his eyes. On the side, there were several men with restrained auras. They looked to be in their 30s to 50s. Accompanying them was an old man in gray clothes. He carried an exquisite small medicine box on his waist. He seemed to be a doctor. The group of them surrounded the middle-aged man who was leaning against the tree with unconcealable worry between their brows. I never thought that the alchemist and doctor of the Huasian sect would also be unable to do anything. In this case, we can only go to the Sky Sun sect to take a look. The old man in gray sighed. He looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Patriarch, don't worry. There are many people with superb medical skills in this world. As long as we can meet them, Patriarch will definitely be fine." "Forget it, I don't have much hope anymore. Even the medical sage and alchemy saint master of the magnificent immortal sect said that there's no way. What else can I do? Life and death are predestined. So be it. I don't want to suffer anymore. Let's go back." Exhaustion was written all over his face. He had been running around seeking medical help for a few months now. Every time he met someone, they would say that there was no way and that they would seek help from someone else. In the past few months, we visited 3 of the 4 great sects. Now, only the Sky Sun sect is left. However, if the other 3 didn't have a solution, how could the Sky Sun sect possibly have one? It seemed that this was the will of the heavens, so he didn't want to force it anymore. It was better to take advantage of the fact that his body hadn't reached its final moments to return to the family and make arrangements for the family's affairs. This was to prevent the family from falling into chaos once he passed away. When everyone heard his words, they were momentarily speechless. After searching for so long, asking so many doctors with superb medical skills, as well as some high-grade alchemists, none of them had a suitable treatment method or medicine. Perhaps there really was no way. Just as everyone's mood was gloomy, they suddenly heard a light humming of a song. The tune of the song was somewhat different from what they were used to. Moreover, the sound permeated the mountain forest and reverberated in the air. They couldn't tell where it was coming from. Chapter 1790. Fengjiu hummed a song about orchid flowers as she walked down the stream. The lyrics were not out yet, but the lively melody made her footsteps light and her mood different. She hummed a song as she used a tree branch to hit the weeds on the side of the mountain path. Occasionally, she would push aside some branches and vines that were blocking the way as she walked down. Although she did not see anyone, the divine sense she released had already detected the people below. In this area, she had only met the man who had come up to fill the water. She did not need to think to know that it was them. Sure enough, as she walked down while humming a song, she saw that the group was preparing to leave. "Big brother, we meet again." She grinned and waved at him. Her gaze swept over the other people without leaving a trace. Finally, her gaze paused on the middle-aged man in his 50s and then moved away. "Jimming, do you know him?" The middle-aged man asked his son beside him. The man in his 30s glanced at the youth carrying the basket of herbs and then looked away. He said to his father, "This youth is resting upstream. The oil in the water was caused by him." Hearing this, the middle-aged man nodded. He looked at the simple and honest youth in green and then smiled, saying, "Looks like a youth who picks herbs." Fengjiu revealed a somewhat silly smile and scratched her head in embarrassment. "I pick herbs. Because I was hungry, I caught a pheasant and roasted it. There was oil on my hands so I washed them. I didn't expect to see people downstream, hee hee." "I see." The middle-aged man smiled and nodded his head. He then said, "This forest is rather deep, so the herbs here should be common. Elixirs are extremely rare, but there are many ferocious beasts. You are just a youngster and don't have any companions. If you want to go down the mountain, you can come with us." Fengjiu blinked and looked at the middle-aged man with a kind smile in surprise. "Master, how can we do that? We don't know where this youth came from." A man behind said and looked at Fengjiu cautiously. The middle-aged man waved his hand and did not mind. "It's just a youth. Don't make such a fuss. Moreover, he looks like a 15 or 16-year-old child. What is there to worry about?" When Fengjiu heard this, her eyes narrowed with a smile. She touched her face with one hand and said cheerfully, "Uncle, I'm almost 20 years old." Did she look so young? 15 or 16 years old. When the middle-aged man heard this, he was also surprised. He then laughed. "I really couldn't tell. After all, your voice hasn't changed. You look like a 15 or 16-year-old youth." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, "It's not good." Then she asked, "Is it far to go down the mountain? Can we walk before dark?" "There's no way out. This is a mountain forest that borders the magnificent immortal sect. The trees here are lush and the roads are not easy to traverse. If not for the fact that there are too many branches in this forest, I would be able to fly on my sword or ride on a flying magic artifact." As the middle-aged man spoke, he saw the youth in front of him looking up at the sky. He smiled and asked, "How should I address you, little brother?" "Oh, my surname is Feng." She retracted her gaze and looked at the middle-aged man. Chapter 1791. Uncle Lu. Fengjiu glanced at him. His eyes narrowed into slits as he greeted him. There was no awkwardness or discomfort. Lu Jimming, who was standing at the side, saw that his father was chatting so well with a youth and could not help but feel a little puzzled. It was just a youth and he could not see anything outstanding about him. He really did not know how his father got along so well with him. With Fengjiu leading the way, the Lu family's people were led by two burly men and there were a few people behind them. Fengjiu, Old Master Lu and Lu Jimming walked in the middle. Along the way, Lu Jimming could only watch. Because he realized that once this unremarkable youth started chatting, there was nothing he did not know about. No matter what his father talked about, he would be able to respond. However, he did notice something. This youth was knowledgeable, but he did not seem to know much about the layout of the east, west, north and south as well as the situation of the various places. Towards these things, he did not know anything at all. "Little brother Feng, you rarely leave the mountain, right? Why did you come to this mountain to gather herbs?" Old Master Lu was also curious. This youth was obviously knowledgeable, but he did not know anything about the geography of the various places. It was as if he lived deep in the mountains. Ah, how did you know? Fengjiu widened his eyes, his face full of curiosity. His simple and honest appearance completely deceived people, completely unaware that this was clearly a little fox. Hearing Fengjiu's words, the corners of the others' mouths twitched. The two of them chatted the whole way and they listened the whole way. If they did not know, then wouldn't they have lived in vain? They were already a little dazed when they saw this youth. Now that he asked this question, they were even more dazed. Could it be that he thought that everyone was like him, lost in the deep mountains and old forests? Old Master Lu laughed joyfully. Perhaps it was Fengjiu's expression that made him laugh, or perhaps it was that silly words that made him laugh. His deep laughter came from his chest and spread joyfully through the forest. Little brother Feng, it really is a pleasure chatting with you. As old Master Lu spoke, he felt his body relax. Fengjiu smiled and did not reply. What Fengjiu didn't expect was that they didn't tell her how long it would take to get down the mountain. She didn't ask in detail and just kept walking with them. When it was dark in the evening, they lit a fire in the forest to rest. When she asked, they said that they hadn't even walked 1/3 of the way. Little brother Feng, didn't you say there's nothing urgent? Then there's no need to rush. We'll reach the foot of the mountain in a few days. Old Master Lu said with a smile as he sat down by the fire and waved to Fengjiu. Sit over here. It's warmer. All right. She nodded and walked over. The medicine basket on her back made a sound that shocked everyone. Kakik! Everyone was stunned and their gazes fell on her medicine basket. Fengjiu chuckled when she saw the astonished looks on everyone's faces. I've already eaten one of the pheasants that I caught, but there's still one that's still alive. I reckon that I knocked it out earlier, so it didn't make a single sound along the way. As she spoke, she took off the medicine basket on her back and handed the half-wrapped leftover roast chicken to the person beside her. Uncle Lu, please help me hold this. This is the leftover roast chicken I ate this morning. Chapter 1792. He held the roasted chicken in his hand and looked at the youth who was rummaging through the basket of herbs. He vaguely saw that he seemed to have pulled open a net and grabbed a pheasant from within. Here, Big Brother Lu, I'll have to trouble you to let them handle it. You can roast it for Uncle to eat. Fengjiu handed the fluttering pheasant to Lu Jiming. Lu Jiming glanced at Fengjiu, took the pheasant and handed it to the people behind him, instructing them to handle it. A gray-robed elder came forward and looked into the basket before asking, You put the pheasant in there. The herbs inside should have been trampled, right? He could vaguely see some messy herbs and a black net. Because it was dark at night, he couldn't tell what kind of herbs were inside. As for the black net, he treated it as an ordinary net and ignored it. It's all right, it's just some ordinary herbs. They can still be used after washing and drying. Moreover, I plan to sell them in the city. Even if they don't look very good, they'll still be worth some money. She smiled as she spoke, tidying up the things in the basket before placing it behind her. Uncle, just give it to me. I can still eat it after it's heated up. She pointed at the remaining roasted chicken. Here. Old Master Lu handed it to him. Seeing that he opened it and placed it over the fire, he said, How about we don't need it? Let them roast it hot, it'll taste better. Fengjiu flipped the stick with the roasted chicken in his hand and said, No need, no need. I'll just eat this. Seeing this, Old Master Lu didn't say anything else. However, when the roasted chicken in Fengjiu's hand was heated up, the aroma wafted out. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva when he smelled it. Your roasted chicken smells really good. If you live in the mountains, you have to have this skill. Otherwise, you won't be able to eat good food. Fengjiu said with a smile. He looked at Old Master Lu beside him and said, I've already eaten this, so I won't share it with you. When I'm done eating, I'll help you roast that pheasant. Old Master Lu nodded in response. Therefore, after the Fengjiu finished eating, she took the processed pheasant and began to roast it. When she was about to add seasoning to the pheasant, a man shouted, What are you adding? Then he vigilantly tried to snatch the seasoning bottle from her hand. Fengjiu narrowed his eyes and swung the branch in his other hand at the man's outstretched hand. A swoosh was heard, followed by the man's gasp. The man instinctively withdrew his hand and glared at Fengjiu. When he extended his hand again, he saw a red mark on the back of his hand. He became even angrier. "You brat, you dare to hit me!" He balled his hand into a fist and swung it at Fengjiu. "How dare you!" Master Lu, who was at the side, shouted in a deep voice. His voice carried the pressure of a superior, causing the man's heart to tremble and his eardrums to hurt. He involuntarily withdrew his hand, lowered his head, and took a step back. Master Lu's stern gaze swept over and lectured, "You're really getting more and more out of hand. Hurry up and leave." The man glared at Fengjiu angrily, then lowered his head and left. "Little brother Feng, don't take offense. They're just worried about my health," he said with a smile as he looked deeply at the young man beside him. He was a little surprised at how the young man had slapped his bodyguard. Chapter 1793. No, why would I be offended? Fengjiu hurriedly waved his hand and said, then smiled embarrassedly, "I just whipped that big guy. Uncle Lu, don't blame me, it's just an instinctive reaction." "What do you mean?" that old Master Lu asked with interest. "Don't I live in the mountains? Every time I barbecued meat, some small animals would steal things from me when I wasn't paying attention. I would often whip them, and this back and forth became a habit." As he spoke, he sprinkled some seasonings on the roast chicken and said, "Uncle Lu, don't worry, these are all spices, it's not harmful to the body." He nodded, not worried that this young man would put poison on the roast meat. After all, it wouldn't do him any good. The two chatted, and not long after, Fengjiu added the last spices, cut off a drumstick from the roast chicken, and handed it to him. "It's done, Uncle Lu, try it." He smiled and was about to eat it, but the gray-robed old man beside him took it. "Give this to me first, I smell it, it's delicious, my stomach has been growling for a long time," the gray-robed old man said. As the gray-clothed old man spoke, he took a sniff of the roasted chicken leg and tore off a small piece to eat. Then, he said to Lord Lu, "Lord, this little brother Feng is really good at roasting meat. It's really delicious." Fengjiu smiled and narrowed his eyes, looking simple and honest. She naturally knew that the gray-robed old man wanted to see if the roast meat was poisoned, and he probably didn't trust her. However, this was normal. When one was outside, it was necessary to be vigilant. Moreover, old Master Lu's identity should not be ordinary. After all, other than his own extraordinary cultivation, the people by his side were also extraordinary. "Here, Uncle Lu, there's another drumstick here." Fengjiu handed him another drumstick. "Thank you." He took it and thanked him, then tore off a piece and ate it. Roar! Suddenly, the roar of a ferocious beast came from the forest, accompanied by some vibrations. In the air, because of the roar, there was a pressure that could be seen with the naked eye, like ripples in water, spreading out in the night. "Alert!" Several men instantly surrounded old Master Lu and Fengjiu, forming a protective circle. Looking at this pressure, it should be a spirit beast of a high rank. As old Master Lu said, he looked at the night sky thoughtfully and muttered, "Why would a spirit beast come here? Could it be that it was chased out from the mountains?" Fengjiu, spirit beasts, as they were usually hidden in the mountains. Spirit beasts in this area. Calm, there. Be ferocious beasts, but there were no spirit beasts because spirit beasts usually, spirit beasts hidden in the mountains be. It was also because of this that Uncle Lu guessed that this spirit beast might have been chased out from the depths of the mountains. She also felt that this was the case, because there was a faint smell of blood in the air. "Stop! You can't escape! Surround it! Don't let it escape! In front, it's in front, quickly catch up!" Chapter 1794. Roar! Another beast's roar was heard. Even though she had not seen it, she could tell that this spiritual beast was injured. Its aura was a little messy. This beast's roar was not as powerful as the previous one. Bang bang! It sounded like the sound of sword aura slashing the ground, or the sound of a spiritual beast crashing into a tree. She could not see it, but the sound was getting closer and clearer. Retreat. Old Master Lu waved his hand and gestured for everyone to retreat quickly. When the crowd heard his command, they quickly protected them and retreated step by step until they were some distance away. Fengjiu followed them and retreated until she saw the scene in front of her. She stopped in her tracks and stopped retreating. A white tiger with a snow-white body suddenly rushed out of the forest. It was one of the rare white tigers, but the problem was that it was a pregnant tigress with a tiger cub in her belly. Judging from her bulging belly, she should be about to give birth. At this moment, this white tiger's snow-white fur was stained with blood. Its front leg seemed to be injured, and it was limping as it ran. Compared to its injuries, what really made it uncomfortable was the violent running and the vibrations in its belly caused by the battle with humans. It seemed to be unable to run anymore. Its hind legs were trembling, and there was a faint trace of blood flowing from them. However, at this moment, more than 10 rogue cultivators who were chasing after it surrounded the white tiger. They all looked ferocious and their strength was at the nascent soul stage. Among them, there was even a cultivator at the mid-stage of the fairy realm. He was probably their leader. They glanced at Old Master Lu and the rest, as if they did not care about them. Their gazes shifted away from them and landed on the white tiger. They raised their heads and laughed loudly. Haha, this white tiger has been chasing it for almost a month. This time, it has finally fallen into our hands. A bald cultivator at the side came forward and asked excitedly, "Big brother, this white tiger looks like it's about to give birth. Should we wait for it to give birth before we capture it? Or should we capture it before it gives birth? Or should we kill this female tiger and take the baby in her belly? Kill the mother tiger and take the little white tiger in her belly." As the middle-stage fairy realm wandering cultivator spoke, he stared at the white tiger with a sinister look in his eyes. This tigress is at the peak of the holy beast stage. If she accidentally becomes a divine beast, it will be even more troublesome to deal with her. The middle-stage fairy realm cultivator squinted his eyes and said in a sinister voice, "White tigers are rare. Kill this female tiger and skin her for auction. A single piece of white tiger skin is enough for us brothers to eat and drink for several years. As for the little white tiger in her stomach, I'll naturally keep it for myself. I'll make a contract with it and make it my contracted beast." "Good. We'll listen to Big Brother." More than a dozen people instantly attacked, once again forcing the white tiger. Not far away, Old Master Lu saw Fengjiu standing in front and not retreating. He couldn't help but call out, Little Brother Feng, quickly come over here. These people don't look very pleasing to the eye." Fengjiu muttered softly. With a slight movement of her fingers, she flicked a pill into the bonfire in front of her. Chapter 1795. "I won't do anything rash," she said softly, her gaze fixed in front of her. She was trying to figure out how much longer this white tiger could last. When Old Master Lu saw the expression on Fengjiu's face, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. There was an indescribably strange feeling in his heart. Although it was a little overboard for those itinerant cultivators to surround and attack a pregnant tigress, this was how the world worked. The strong preyed on the weak. What's more, that tigress was a rare white tiger in the tiger clan. It was reasonable for those people to have their eyes on this tigress. Moreover, with these people's strength, it was only a matter of time before this white tiger fell into their hands. In front of them, the white tiger fought with all its might. It bared its teeth and let out a low growl. Its eyes were filled with anger and anxiety, as well as a trace of worry that no one else knew about. Its hind legs were trembling as blood dripped from them. It still had to avoid the attacks of the humans. The pain from its stomach was rapidly draining its strength. Not long after, it saw a long sword piercing towards its neck. It wanted to dodge, but its hind legs were too weak and it fell to the ground. Roar! The white tiger roared in grief and indignation. Its tiger eyes stared fixedly at the long sword that was thrusting towards it. However, at that critical moment, it only saw a tiny ray of light flash past. With a whoosh, it pierced into the wrist of the person holding the sword. The long sword that was thrusting towards it also fell to the ground due to that person's pain. With the danger averted, the white tiger was stunned. It swept its gaze around and it saw a young man in green robes standing not too far away. When it met the young man's gaze, it let out a low growl. When the Lu family members who were standing behind Fengjiu saw this scene, they couldn't help but feel that it was strange. None of them saw how Fengjiu had attacked. They only saw the person who had pierced the white tiger suddenly let out a low cry and the long sword in his hand fell to the ground. Who is it? The itinerant cultivator whose long sword had fallen to the ground shouted fiercely. He suddenly turned around and his gaze landed on the Lu family members. It's me. Fengjiu narrowed his eyes with a smile. However, there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. When his light voice rang out, he strode forward. Little brother Feng. Old Master Lu had appeared beside Fengjiu and placed his hand on Fengjiu's shoulder in an attempt to stop him. Fengjiu turned around and looked at Old Master Lu with a smile. It's all right, they can't do anything to me. With that, he walked forward. Master, don't interfere. A man stepped forward and said in a low voice, We only met him by chance, there's no need to offend those people for him. Father, we don't have as many people as they do. It's best if we don't get involved in this, Lu Jiming said in a low voice. It was unwise to make an enemy out of those people for the sake of a stranger. However, just as he finished speaking, he suddenly saw that the dozen or so rogue cultivators in front of him didn't look right. Their footsteps were weak, and they couldn't even stand steadily. He couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. Damn it! What's going on? A rogue cultivator propped himself up on the ground with his saber as cold sweat oozed out of his forehead. We don't have any strength in our bodies, and we can't even use our spiritual energy. We've been drugged. Another rogue cultivator widened his eyes in shock. He looked at Old Master Lu and the rest, thinking that they were the culprits. However, how did they drug them silently? How exactly did they do it? They didn't even notice. Chapter 1796. Since the people on their side did not do anything, it could only mean that little brother Feng was behind this? When did he do it? How could they not notice him when they were all by his side? At this moment, their hearts were filled with shock and astonishment. Fortunately, he did not have any ill intentions towards them. Otherwise, they might not even know when he would lay his hands on them. The gray-robed elder muttered softly, What kind of medicine can knock out a fairy realm cultivator? And it's colorless and odorless? Unbelievable! This is too unbelievable. He was a medical practitioner and naturally knew that it was easy to use medicine to knock out an ordinary cultivator. However, the more powerful a person was, the more useless medicine would be. Furthermore, if there was any smell, it would be easily detected by a powerful person. However, even he did not smell any medicine in the air. If those itinerant cultivators had not collapsed one by one, he would not have dared to believe that someone could use medicine to knock out these itinerant cultivators whose abilities were not to be underestimated. Still not collapsing? Feng Jiu slowly stepped forward. Seeing that some cultivators were lying on the ground weakly while some were still holding on, she smiled and narrowed her eyes. She reached out and took out a pack of white medicinal foam from her sleeve. Then I'll add some more for you. As he spoke, he opened the packet of medicinal powder. With a wave of his sleeve, the white powder scattered and sprinkled on the faces of the rogue cultivators. The corners of the mouths of the people from the Lu clan twitched. They were speechless for a long time. So it could be done like this. Cough, cough. Even though they wanted to hold their breaths, when the powder landed on their bodies, the pungent smell caused them to cough uncontrollably. Then, one by one, they collapsed. Feng Jiu waved his sleeve and a light breeze blew past, dispersing the smell of the medicine. Then she looked at the white tiger lying by the tree. She was not in a hurry to walk forward. Instead, she stared into its eyes for a while before asking, Do you want me to bandage your wounds? She asked as she walked forward. Old Master Lu, who saw what she was doing, quickly stopped her. Little brother Feng, you can't. Feng Jiu stopped in his tracks and looked back. He seemed puzzled and asked, Why not? Old Master Lu did not walk forward. He only walked out of the protective circle in the middle. He glanced at the vigilant white tiger and said, The white tiger is ferocious by nature and cannot be compared to ordinary tigers. It is also not close to humans. If you approach it, I'm afraid it will attack you. Oh, so that's how it is. Fengjiu suddenly smiled and said, but it doesn't matter, it has no strength left. As he spoke, he walked up to the white tiger's side. The holy beast's intelligence has already been awakened. You know that I have no ill intentions, right? Let me take a look at your wound and I'll bandage it for you. The white tiger stared at Fengjiu and let out a low growl. It turned around and revealed its belly in front of Fengjiu. It stared at her with pleading eyes. Everyone from the Lu clan was dumbfounded. They saw the white tiger, which had always disliked people getting close to it, turn over and lie flat on its back with its 4 limbs facing up. The scene was so strange that it was unbelievable. Chapter 1797. She raised her head and looked at the white tiger, finally understanding the meaning of the pleading in its eyes. She touched the tiger's body with one hand, and when her hand touched the fresh blood, her brows furrowed. She didn't expect the injury to be so serious. When her hand touched the tiger's stomach, she could clearly feel the white tiger's life force flowing away. Its injury was more serious than she had imagined. Moreover, its amniotic fluid had broken, and its hind legs were trembling. It didn't have the strength to give birth to a cub, and this tigress was showing its belly to her. It actually wanted her to cut open its belly and take out the cub. Realizing this, her heart suddenly became heavy. Whether it was a human or an animal, the nature of a mother was always so touching. A precious white tiger that was about to step into the realm of a divine beast was willing to sacrifice itself for the sake of its offspring. The mother tiger let out a low howl, as if urging her to hurry up. That low howl made her come back to her senses. She looked at the mother tiger and revealed a gentle smile. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Let me take a look at your wound first. The mother tiger raised its belly and didn't move, just looking at her like that. The pleading in its eyes had a trace of moisture, and the tears flowed from its eyes, slipping down its fur and disappearing. Since you want me to help, then you have to listen to me. Hurry up, don't waste time. She said softly and gently patted the mother tiger's head. The mother tiger had no choice but to turn sideways and show her the wound. Fengjiu quickly cleaned the wound, and after sprinkling some medicinal powder on the wound to stop the bleeding, he said, lie back down. Belly up. The people from the Lu family who were standing not far away were dumbfounded. A white tiger was flipping around and raising its belly, and that young man was touching and applying medicine. What was he trying to do? Feng, little brother Feng, what are you trying to do? Old Master Lu couldn't help but ask. His voice had a trace of stutter. He had lived for most of his life, but he had never seen such a strange thing. This white tiger is about to give birth, but it's injured and its life force is draining away. It doesn't have the strength to give birth on its own, so I have to cut open the mother tiger's stomach and take out its tiger cubs. Fengjiu replied without turning his head. Uncle Lu, please help me light a fire and move it to my side. The members of the Lu family were dumbfounded when they heard that. They stared at the young man with his back facing them. He was going to cut open the tiger's stomach like those people did before? Although that was because the mother tiger's life force was depleted and she could not give birth to tiger cubs, that was too cruel. Could he bear to do it? Fengjiu didn't hear anything for a while, so she looked back and asked, Uncle Lu? Old Master Lu met with a pair of clear and calm eyes and suddenly regained his senses. He hurriedly replied, Oh, okay. Then he instructed the people beside him. Quick, light another fire and move it to little brother Feng's side. The others also regained their senses and hurriedly picked up branches to light a fire next to Fengjiu. They looked at the rogue cultivators who were already unconscious on the ground and couldn't help but hesitate. They looked at their family head. Old Master, how do we deal with these people? If they woke up or the medicine was cured, wouldn't it be troublesome? Chapter 1798. Fengjiu did not even look at them and said, These people don't look like good people. Naturally, I'll just kill them and be done with it. Sometimes, one had to leave a good ending when doing things. Some people could be spared while others could not. When Old Master Lu heard this, a glint flashed across his eyes. He did not expect this young man to say that he would just kill them and be done with it. After all, he looked like he had never come into contact with such matters before. After staying in the deep mountains for so long, he seemed to be honest and pure. When he thought of this honest and pure man, Old Master Lu covered his mouth with one hand and coughed lightly. There were times when he misjudged people. This young man was not honest and pure at all. How could such an honest and pure man silently take down more than 10 powerful wandering cultivators? How could such an honest and pure man say that he would just kill them and be done with it so easily? The more he interacted with this young man, the more he felt that he was a mystery. At first, he thought that he had seen through him and thought that he was just an inexperienced young man. Who would have thought that he would change his understanding of him time and time again, bringing shock to them? After adjusting his emotions, Old Master Lu gestured to the people beside him and said, "Clean them up." Those men were also used to doing such things, so they responded very straightforwardly. Other than the 2 men who stayed by Lord Lu's side, the rest of the men all took out their daggers and directly slit the necks of those unconscious people. The feeling of being able to kill a nascent soul realm cultivator and a fairy realm expert with just a light swing of the dagger made the men feel a little strange. They had never tried to kill a rogue cultivator with such strength with just a single swing of the dagger. As the gray-robed old man was a doctor, although he did not step forward to help, he still took a few steps forward to watch. Even at his age, he still could not cut open a tiger's stomach. At this moment, with the help of the firelight, he watched as Fengjiu took out a sharp dagger and shaved off the fur on the tiger's stomach. Then he rubbed some unknown medicine on it. They could only smell a strange medicinal smell in the air. Seeing the young man's focused expression, they didn't dare to disturb him and just watched quietly. However, when they saw him use the knife to cut the bottom of the tiger's belly, the sharp dagger directly drew out a line of saliva. At the same time, blood gushed out, and the tigress howled in pain. They saw the young man reach into the hole and gently fumble inside. Not long after, a white tiger cub that was drenched in blood was held out by the young man's hand. When they saw the white tiger cub curled up in a ball, they were somewhat stunned. It came out just like that? The tigress no longer had the strength to howl. Her entire body went limp as if her life had come to an end. She tried to open her eyes to look at her child. She wanted to lick it and remember the scent of its body. However, due to the loss of its life force and the gushing of blood when it was cut open, it only felt its vision turn black before it fainted and fell into the endless darkness. Feng Jiu placed the white tiger cub on a piece of clothing that had been prepared and quickly sewed up the wound on the mother tiger's abdomen with a needle and thread. This scene made the gray-robed old man at the side unable to take his eyes off it. When he saw that the young man had stitched up the wound and no more blood flowed out, he originally wanted to ask, but he was afraid of disturbing him and forcibly suppressed the urge to ask. Chapter 1799. After Fengjiu wiped the blood off the little white tiger's body, she wrapped it in her clothes and placed it beside the mother tiger. With a flick of her finger, a pill appeared in her palm and she stuffed it into the mother tiger's mouth. Then, she cleaned her hands and said matter-of-factly, "Of course. The wound can only survive if it's sewn up. If it's not sewn up, it will bleed to death." "But how can the skin be sewn up like clothes? It seems..." He was still in disbelief. After all, he had never seen such a method before. Hearing that, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile. No matter who it was, as long as they saw her sewing up the wound, they would find it strange. Of course, they had never seen it before and would naturally find it strange. "Isn't Elder Lu a doctor? Then you should know that as long as it's treatable and the method is good, it can be used." She stood up with a smile and rubbed her hands. Looking around, those itinerant cultivators had been cleaned up and even their corpses were nowhere to be seen. But the elderly in gray wanted to ask more but was stopped by Old Master Lu. All right, why are you asking so much?" Old Master Lu gestured for him to step aside before looking at Fengjiu with a smile. "We walked all the way here and thought that little brother Feng was just a herb gatherer. We didn't know that little brother Feng had such medical skills. It's really surprising." "Hey, not really. I only know a few moves. Even if my clothes are torn in the deep mountains, I have to mend them myself. I'll get used to it after some practice. She smiled and squinted her eyes. She was a little shy and a little embarrassed. It would have been better if she didn't say that. After hearing that, even old Master Lu's mouth twitched a few times. So this young man sewed up the tiger skin like clothes? But did he really know how to do that? In his opinion, it was not necessary. But since he didn't say, he didn't ask too much. After all, they had just met by chance and it was normal to have some small talk. Oh, right, those itinerant cultivators have all been dealt with. The things we got from them are all here. As old Master Lu spoke, he looked at his son beside him. Jiming, give the things to little brother Feng. Yes. Lu Jiming unwrapped the items wrapped in cloth and handed them over. These were obtained from the loose cultivators. There are spatial rings and Chenkuan bags. There should be quite a lot of things inside, but we didn't check them. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and looked at them. For me? Hee, I'm not giving them to you. They were yours in the first place. Old Master Lu chuckled. But I didn't kill this person. Fengjiu blinked and said, not reaching out to take it. The burly men at the side couldn't help but roll their eyes when they heard this. They thought to themselves, is this young man stupid? There were so many things in front of him, yet he was still hesitating. Although they didn't take out the items inside, they knew that with the strength and cultivation of those rogue cultivators, there must be a lot of valuable things on them. But you're the one who put him down. Old Master Lu said in amusement. He looked at Fengjiu and said with a smile, little brother Feng, you don't have to feel troubled. Just accept it. With my Lu family's background, these things are just some small trinkets. Chapter 1800. Hearing this, old Master Lu laughed. The more he looked at this young man, the more he liked him. He was kind-hearted and would save a tigress whose life was hanging by a thread when she was being attacked. However, he was also ruthless when he needed to be and handled things cleanly. He was able to keep a straight face and not show any greed when faced with such a huge amount of wealth. After declining, he was able to accept those things without any hesitation. In his eyes, this behavior was straightforward and straightforward. It was obvious that he had a good temperament. Little brother Feng, I wonder if your master. The dazed old man in gray asked. However, before he could finish, he was interrupted by Fengjiu. Old Master Lu, don't ask my master. My master is a strange person. When I left the mountain, I told you not to mention his name in front of others. Fengjiu said with a smile. I see. The old man in gray felt that it was a pity. He originally thought that if he could find little brother Feng's master, perhaps the family head's illness could be cured. Who knew that the other party was a recluse? Even so, he couldn't help but look at Fengjiu. He carefully looked at her and asked, I see that little brother Feng's medical skills are also very good, right? Also, those medicines are extraordinary. Fengjiu smiled embarrassedly and looked at them with some embarrassment. Didn't I say earlier? I only know a little, and I only know how to sew clothes. I do know some herbs, but my medical skills. I can treat animals and ferocious beasts, but I don't dare to say that I can treat people. Hearing this, everyone in the Lu family twitched their mouths. Alright, so he was a veterinarian. No matter how good his medical skills were, they would not dare to ask him to treat their family head. As for those medicines, she grinned. My master gave them to me for self-defense. He said that there are many bad people at the foot of the mountain, so I won't be at a disadvantage if I have some for self-defense. Understood. The old man in gray sighed and nodded, indicating that he did not need to say any more. All right, let's all take a break. Old Master Lu instructed, then looked at Fengjiu. Little brother Feng, you should rest too. Okay. Fengjiu smiled and nodded, then sat down beside the white tiger. Seeing this, the Lu family members lit another bonfire. Old Master Lu leaned against the tree and closed his eyes to rest. As the night deepened, the faint sounds of ferocious beasts could be heard from the forest. The sounds of insects could be heard in the night, accompanied by the crackling sounds of burning branches. Even though they were still on guard against their surroundings, they couldn't help but feel exhausted. Apart from the 4 people who took turns to keep watch, The others gradually fell asleep. Everyone's breathing calmed down. Half of the night passed, and just as dawn was about to arrive, the sky gradually brightened. The tigress moved a little and suddenly opened her eyes. When the tigress woke up, Fengjiu, who was sleeping next to the tigress, opened his eyes and met the tigress's shocked eyes. Looking at his expression, she couldn't help but smile. "You're not dead, no need to be so shocked." Chapter 1801. The tigress was dumbfounded when she saw that the wound on the tiger's stomach had disappeared without a trace. Then, she saw the human in front of her remove the stitches on the wound and apply a layer of cold ointment on it. She looked at the human in front of her, then at the tiger cub lying beside her. For a moment, no one knew what she was thinking. "All right, bring your child back to the inner regions," Fengjiu said as he stroked the white tiger's head. Seeing this, the tigress seemed to have made up her mind. She bit the white tiger cub beside her and pushed it to Fengjiu's side. She stood up and shook her fur. Apart from the bandaged wound on her foreleg that still hurt a little, the rest of her body had already recovered. Furthermore, the aura that she had lost in her body had also returned. At this moment, she naturally exuded the aura of a divine beast. When Fengjiu and the tigress were talking, the Lu family members had already woken up. They watched in astonishment as the tigress bit her own tiger cub and pushed it to Fengjiu. What was even more unbelievable was that in just one night, the tigress, who was originally on the verge of death, had actually regained her vitality. This speed of recovery astonished them. "Awoo!" The white tiger cub stretched its back and opened its small mouth to let out a soft "awoo." Its voice was as soft as a cat's meow. It slowly opened its eyes and ran weakly from Fengjiu to the tigress's side with its 4 short legs. Its cute little head rubbed randomly under the tigress's body, as if it was looking for something. Fengjiu smiled as he watched the white tiger cub raise its round little head and suck desperately under the tigress's body. It even turned its head slightly from time to time to stare at Fengjiu. The cub's adorable look made Fengjiu unable to shift his gaze away. The tigress allowed the cub to eat as it looked lovingly at its cub. She raised one of her tiger claws and gently stroked the white fur of the cub until it burped. Then she pushed it in front of Fengjiu again. The cub thought that its mother was playing with it, so it ran back excitedly. Its short tail wagged happily, and it quickly hid in its mother's soft fur. The tigress had no choice but to grab the cub again and push it in front of Fengjiu again. This action made the Lu family members stare at the sky, completely speechless. This was really strange. Why would the tigress be willing to give her newborn tiger cub to someone else? It was unbelievable that she would push the cub out again and again. "Are you going to give it to me?" Fengjiu asked with a smile. She was wondering if she should bring the little white tiger along. "Awoo!" The tigress let out a low howl and pushed the cub back to Fengjiu's side. This time, she turned around and leaped, disappearing into the forest. "Awoo! Awoo!" The cub saw that the tigress had left and wanted to chase after her with its short legs. However, after running for some distance, it couldn't find the tigress. It couldn't help but squat there and let out a pitiful howl. Fengjiu walked forward and carried the cub. He looked at the forest and said, "You don't have to look anymore. Your mother has given you to me. You can come and see it when you have the chance in the future." Chapter 1802. At this moment, Old Master Lu was looking curiously at the little white tiger in Fengjiu's arms. When he heard his words, he smiled and said, "We can leave any time. If we speed up, we might be able to walk out in 4 to 5 days. He paused and looked at the little white tiger in Fengjiu's arms. He said hesitantly, "Little brother Feng, if you carry this little white tiger down the mountain like this, I'm afraid it will bring you trouble." White tigers were rare to begin with, much less such a small tiger cub. Not to mention that he had yet to form a contract with it. Even if he did, carrying this little white tiger to a crowded place was bound to bring unnecessary trouble. If someone really set their sights on it and tried to snatch it away, he was afraid that he would be killed because of it. It was also because they had chatted along the way that he felt the need to remind this youth. "It's just a little tiger cub. It won't happen," Fengjiu said with a smile, as if he did not understand the meaning behind his words. Actually, she understood what he meant. This Uncle Lu was worried that after entering the city, the little white tiger would be targeted and snatched away, or even be killed. However, who would dare to snatch her things? Who would have the ability to snatch them away? It's always good to be careful. Why don't you form a contract with this little tiger cub first, then keep it in the contract space? This way, it won't attract the attention of others. Old Master Lu suggested. After all, as long as one formed a contract with a spirit beast, one could naturally let the spirit beast enter the contract space in one's body. This way, it would be more convenient. Let's talk about it after we leave this forest. It's still small now, I still have to think of what to find for it to eat. She was a little distressed at the mention of this. Such a small tiger cub probably didn't even know how to eat meat, so where could she find milk for it to eat? We can feed it water first. When we reach the city, we can buy some goat milk or porridge and water. As Old Master Lu spoke, he gestured for everyone to clear the fire before walking down. After they walked far away, the female tiger walked out again from a certain part of the forest. She stood between the trees and watched from afar. Only when they could not be seen did she leap back into the depths of the mountain. For the rest of the day, they did not get much rest. Perhaps it was because Fengjiu's actions had left the Lu family's men dumbfounded, or perhaps it was because they could not tell what kind of person Fengjiu was. Thus, even though many people in the Lu family had designs on the little white tiger, they did not dare to act impudently. After all, it was one thing for them to be moved, but their family head obviously had a good impression of this young man. If they were to set their sights on this young man, perhaps Fengjiu wouldn't even need to do anything. Their family head would deal with them first. Another day passed. When the sky gradually darkened, they rested again. After all, it was not easy to travel at night. Fengjiu, on the other hand, was teasing the cub in her arms to drink some water. Unexpectedly, the cub didn't drink any water at all. It only sniffed and turned its head away, lying listlessly in her arms. Not drinking? You haven't eaten anything all day. Come lick some water. She poured some more water, but the cub still turned its head away without giving her any face. Chapter 1803. Fengjiu said helplessly, "This little thing doesn't even drink water, and there's nothing for it to eat in this forest. It would be better if it was bigger, but it's just a baby tiger." She was also helpless. Seeing the little white tiger lying listlessly in her arms, she felt her heart ache. This newborn baby tiger had been hungry for an entire day, and they were going to stay in this forest for a few more days. If it didn't drink water, wouldn't it be hungry forever? She rarely made fasting pills for cultivators, so she couldn't give it one even if she wanted to, but suddenly, an idea flashed through her mind. That's it. She still had spiritual liquid in her space. She could just feed it to the baby tiger, right? With a flip of her hand, she took out a bottle of spiritual liquid, opened it, and put it next to the baby tiger's mouth. "Here, try this." Seeing this, Old Master Lu couldn't help but shake his head with a smile. If humans don't drink medicine, then spiritual beasts won't either. Besides, this medicine can't be eaten casually. It's fine, it's just some spiritual liquid, there's no harm in eating it. As Fengjiu said this, he saw the baby tiger stick out its little tongue to lick the liquid. He couldn't help but squint, thinking to himself, this little thing knows its stuff. The gray-robed old man beside them smelled the scent and couldn't help but shudder. He quickly walked up to the baby tiger and sniffed it. When the rich spiritual energy and medicinal fragrance entered his nose, the old man widened his eyes and stared at Fengjiu with a pained expression. You're actually giving such a precious thing to a spiritual beast? You're such a jerk. Old Master Lu, how can you say that? Little brother Feng has the freedom to use his things however he wants. Don't overstep your boundaries. Old Master Lu frowned and said from the side. Fengjiu smiled and glanced at Old Master Lu. He knew that the old man could tell the quality of the medicinal liquid in her hand with just a sniff, so he didn't blame him. When Old Master Lu heard this, he said to Old Master Lu, "Old Master, you don't know, but that bottle of spiritual liquid in his hand is definitely above the 5th grade, above the 5th grade. He actually used it to feed a baby tiger. Even if it's not mine, it's still painful to see it. Hearing this, old Master Lu was a little surprised. Above the 5th grade? His heart skipped a beat, and he looked at Fengjiu with even more curiosity. She gave him a spiritual liquid above the 5th grade? Spiritual liquids of the 5th rank and above were treasures that would be fought over in an auction. She actually used it to feed a little baby beast? Who was this little brother Feng? Did he not know the preciousness of tier 5 and above spirit liquids? Little brother Feng, old Master Lu, little, old Master Lu, and little brother, old Master Lu. My master gave it to me, Fengjiu said matter-of-factly. She blamed everything on her master who was nowhere to be seen. Hearing this, old Master Lu and old Master Lu looked at each other and asked again, "Then do you know what grade the spiritual liquid in your hand is? Do you know what a 5th grade spiritual liquid represents?" "I know. It represents money." Fengjiu smiled and said, "I know that a bottle of spiritual liquid can be sold for a lot of money. But my master said that I can't sell it and must keep it for my own use." Chapter 1804. They watched as the little cub drank the entire bottle of medicine and licked the corner of its mouth as if it hadn't had enough yet. Its fur seemed to have become smoother and shinier. They couldn't help but feel envious. Sometimes, humans really couldn't compare to pet beasts. This kind of treatment was not something that ordinary people could compare to. They rested in the forest for a night and continued their journey the next day. Along the way, old Master Lu pestered Fengjiu to ask about his master, and old Master Lu told him many things about this place. 2 days later, that evening, the Lu family lit a fire and rested. Old Master Lu and Fengjiu sat by the fire. After passing a piece of barbecued meat to Fengjiu, old Master Lu smiled. "We'll reach the city tomorrow afternoon. After staying here for so long, we can finally have a good rest when we get back." Yes, I've been eating barbecued meat for the past few days. I've lost my appetite when I see it now. When we reach the city tomorrow, let's find a good restaurant and have a good meal. She smiled again. "I still want to treat you guys to a big meal." "Haha, if that's the case, we won't stand on ceremony." Old Master Lu didn't decline. They chatted and laughed until late at night, when they leaned against a tree to rest. However, that night, Fengjiu, who was resting with the little cub in his arms, heard the sound of coughing, followed by the sound of uneven breathing. Old Master Lu's anxious voice and Lu Jiming's cry of surprise. She opened her eyes and saw the Lu family surrounding the tree where old Master Lu was resting. Their faces were filled with worry and anxiety. She put the little cub down and walked up to them. Old Master, medicine, hurry and swallow the medicine." Old Master Lu's anxious voice carried a trace of panic as he poured out the medicine for old Master Lu with trembling hands. Father, how are you? Father, don't scare me," Lu Jiming said in a trembling voice as he gently patted his father's back, trying to help him breathe. Fengjiu took a look and saw that old Master Lu's face was covered in sweat. His face was pale and he looked like he was about to collapse. Both of his hands were clutching the front of his clothes tightly. His expression was pained and he looked like he was in so much pain that he couldn't breathe. His entire body was tense and he fainted. Seeing this, Fengjiu hurriedly shouted at them, "Quickly lay him flat." When Elder Lu saw that it was Fengjiu, he hurriedly listened to him and laid him down. The white-haired old man's face was filled with helplessness and panic. "Little brother Feng, what should we do?" "What to do? Master's illness this time is more serious than the previous few times. What should we do?" Father," Lu Jiming cried out in a trembling voice. He looked at his father, who was not moving at all and did not even seem to be breathing. Trembling, he reached out to touch his father. He was so frightened that he fell to the ground and muttered absent-mindedly, Father is not breathing." "What?" Elder Lu was shocked. He stepped forward to take a look and immediately panicked. How could this be? How could this be? Seeing that they were scared out of their wits, Fengjiu squeezed forward and half knelt beside Elder Lu. He crossed his arms and pressed on his chest to give him first aid. At the same time, he instructed, Big brother Lu, come over and blow air into your father's mouth. What? Lu Jiming stood there in a daze. He did not understand Feng Jiu's words or what he meant. He was already dead. Why was he blowing air into his father's mouth? What was he trying to do? Chapter 1805. Without further thought, Lu Jiming hurriedly knelt down and followed Feng Jiu's instructions. He lifted his father's chin slightly, pinched his nose, and blew into his mouth forcefully. Feng Jiu did not stop. She continued to give him first aid until she felt that he had regained his breath. She then asked Lu Jiming to step back and untied Old Master Lu's shirt to let him rest. Cough, cough. Old Master Lu slowly opened his eyes and looked at Feng Jiu in a daze, as if he did not know what had happened. Meanwhile, the elderly man in gray and Lu Jiming, who had already stepped back, widened their eyes in disbelief when they saw that the person who had stopped breathing had regained his breath and even opened his eyes. He's alive? What's wrong? Old Master Lu asked as he rubbed his chest gently. The pain this time was more severe than before. Was he really going to die soon? The father, are you all right? How do you feel now? Lu Jiming asked in a trembling voice. He could not believe that someone who had stopped breathing a moment ago could be revived. Quick, let me take a look. The elderly man in gray hurriedly squatted by the side and reached out to check his pulse. When he felt that the pulse had returned to normal, he could not help but look in shock at Feng Jiu, who had already stepped aside. Did I faint again just now? Old Master Lu asked as he looked at the people around him and smiled. Don't worry, it's fine. You'll be fine after taking the medicine. The Lu family members at the side all looked at their master with complicated gazes. He had not fainted just now. He had stopped breathing. If not for that youth, he would have. At that thought, everyone's gaze turned towards the youth who was standing at the side with the little white tiger in his arms. They could not help but think to themselves, who exactly is this youth? Does he really only know how to treat beasts? But just now, he was clearly the one who had saved their master. Why are you all looking at me? Isn't Uncle Lu fine now? Feng Jiu stroked the little white tiger in his arms as he yawned and walked back. It was only the middle of the night. She decided to sleep for a while more. What's wrong? Old Master Lu sensed that something was amiss and asked. Father, just now. Lu Jiming wanted to tell him that he had stopped breathing, but he didn't know how to say it. He could only look at Elder Lu beside him. Elder Lu retracted his gaze and said to Old Master Lu, Old Master, you died just now. Hearing this, Old Master Lu was taken aback, seemingly puzzled. Dead? How is that possible? He was about to die. How could he wake up? It's true. Lu Jiming couldn't help but look at Feng Jiu. If it wasn't for him, Father, you wouldn't have woken up. You really died just now. We didn't know what to do. It was little brother Feng who saved you. After seeing Elder Lu nod, Master Lu was shocked. His eyes couldn't help but turn to where Feng Jiu was resting. After a while, he gestured, Help me up. Since little brother Feng saved me, I should thank him personally. Hearing that, Elder Lu and Lu Jiming hurriedly helped him up and walked with him towards the youth who was squinting under the tree. Little brother Feng, Old Master Lu called out when they reached the front. Chapter 1806. Little brother Feng, thank you for saving me. Old Master Lu bowed to him solemnly. Feng Jiu stroked the soft fur of the little cub in his arms and smiled. Actually, I didn't do anything. It was Uncle Lu who transferred qi to you and saved you. Lu Jiming didn't think much of it at first, but now that Feng Jiu mentioned it, his expression couldn't help but become a little unnatural. Although he was his father, the matter of transferring qi through mouth-to-mouth was really quite strange. However, he was also very happy that he could save his father by transferring qi to him. Little brother Feng Jiu, I have something to ask. He sat down next to Feng Jiu, as if he wanted to talk about it in detail. Uncle Lu, please ask. Feng Jiu smiled. Do you know what illness I have? Old Master Lu asked bluntly. His wise gaze fell on Feng Jiu's face, as if he didn't want to miss the expression on the youth's face. He wanted to know if he knew what illness he had. More or less. Feng Jiu nodded and didn't hide it. He looked at him and said, "You should be suffering from angina pectoris when the illness acts up. You have short breaths and cold sweat, and sometimes your chest feels tight too." Old Master Lu and Old Master Lu were shocked. He knew just by looking? Then his medical skills. Little brother Feng, you have a way, right? You have a way to save my old master, right? Old Master Lu asked in a trembling voice. When Lu Jiming heard this, he remembered that Feng Jiao had saved his father's life. Now that he knew that he might have a way, he immediately knelt down in front of him without another word. Little brother Feng, please save my father, I beg of you. As long as you can cure my father, our Lu family will never forget your great kindness. Hey, what are you doing? Don't kneel to me for no reason. She jumped up and quickly jumped to the side, glaring at him. If you have something to say it properly. Don't kneel so easily, I don't like it. Little brother Feng, I came out this time to find a doctor. If you can cure my illness, this Lu will definitely thank you. Lord Lu said seriously, but there was also a trace of nervousness in his heart. The young physician before him might have already noticed the problem with his body, but he didn't bring it up. Instead, he told them that his medical skills were only superficial and he only treated spirit beasts. If he hadn't acted up in the middle of the night, and if he hadn't happened to be here, they might have really missed this chance to live. When Feng Jiao heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Uncle Lu, aren't you afraid that I'll make it worse? Seeing that he didn't directly refuse and instead said such joking words, Master Lu was delighted and hurriedly said, I believe in little brother Feng. Feng Jiao smiled and said, let's talk about it when we reach the city. Originally, she had planned to go to the city to take a look at him, but she didn't expect him to have a relapse in the middle of the night. Moreover, his condition seemed to be quite serious. All right. Master Lu replied with a smile, his anxious heart finally relaxed. On this day, he couldn't help but hope that the sky would brighten soon so that they could leave the mountain and enter the city as soon as possible. He was anxious, so when the sky gradually brightened, they set off and walked down the mountain. Around noon, they arrived at the nearest town. They found a good restaurant and entered it. Chapter 1807. The Lu family members looked at old Master Lu. If this young man had not offered to treat their patriarch, they would not mind feasting on him. However, now that their patriarch had asked him for help, how could they still have the nerve to feast on him? Even if they wanted to eat, it should be the Lu family who treated him, right? Old Master Lu smiled and waved his hand. Since little brother Feng has said so, order a table of food and wine and have a good meal. Everyone responded and cupped their fists at Feng Jiao in unison. Thank you, young Master Feng. The men of the Lu family sat at a table downstairs while old Master Lu and the others went upstairs to the side room. After ordering a dozen or so dishes, the wine and water were served, and they went straight to the main topic. Little brother Feng, may I know how to treat my illness? Old Master Lu asked. Feng Jiao drank a cup of wine and said, I believe old Master Lu has already told you about the food, so I won't say more. As for the treatment, it's nothing much. You just need to take medicine for about a month after the acupuncture. Old Master Lu was secretly shocked. This illness can be cured in about a month? You'll recover in about a month, and you'll see results in half a month. Feng Jiao smiled and said, let's eat first. I'll give you acupuncture after you're full. Hearing this, they nodded and didn't say anything else. They accompanied him to finish the meal. However, despite the sumptuous food in front of them, except for Feng Nine, the other three people didn't eat much because they were thinking about their illness. After the meal, they drank a few cups of tea and changed rooms from the restaurant to an inn. In the guest room. Take off your shirt and lie flat on the bed. Feng Jiao said and turned to old Master Lu. I'll teach you this acupuncture technique. In the coming days, you can treat Uncle Lu with acupuncture. With this acupuncture technique and medicine, the effect will be better. Old Master Lu was excited. Teach me? How can I do that? Usually he would not teach non-disciples, but your medical skills are not bad. I just need to tell you the essentials. Why can't it work? Feng smiled and asked Lu Jiming to stand guard outside and not let anyone disturb him. Then he inserted the needles while giving instructions to old Master Lu. Half an hour later, Feng walked out of the room. Behind him, Elder Lu looked at him with respect and admiration. The excitement on his old face still hadn't dissipated. "Little brother Feng, how is my father?" Lu Jiming asked when he saw them come out. "I'm fine. I just fell asleep." Feng said, "I'm going back to rest too. I've already written the prescription and sent it to old Master Lu. You can handle the rest of the matter yourselves." With that, he walked past him and headed to another guest room. "You stay in the guest room and watch over the patriarch. I'll go get the herbs right away." Elder Lu couldn't hide his excitement as he walked out, intending to get the herbs himself. When Feng reached the guest room, he asked the waiter to prepare a bath for him. After taking a bath, he summoned the little tiger from his space and hugged it in his arms and fell asleep. The next morning, old Master Lu woke up feeling refreshed. The stuffy feeling in his chest that he had been suppressing all year round seemed to have cleared up quite a bit. His entire spirit was much better than yesterday, and he couldn't help but feel happy. Chapter 1808. That's right. His medical skills are really brilliant. If he's like this, his master must be even more amazing. Elder Lu sighed. If the disciple was so amazing, then how amazing would the master be? He just didn't know what kind of reclusive expert his master was. "I'm relieved that father's illness can be cured." As Lu Jiming spoke, the huge rock in his heart was finally put down. "I've been worried that father's illness can't be cured. If our Lu family falls into chaos, then things will be troublesome." Elder Lu shook his head. "Every branch of the Lu family wants to fight for power. I'm afraid that if there's internal strife, other families will have the opportunity to take advantage of it. That would be troublesome. However, now that my body is gradually recovering, this is good news." His voice paused slightly. After thinking for a while, he said, "However, you have to pass down the order that the news of my treatment must not be spread. As for that, before my body fully recovers, it can't be spread. I was thinking of using this opportunity to clear out the people in the residence." "Yes, we understand." The two responded. "It's getting late. Little brother Feng should be awake. Let's go. Call him to eat something together." As Elder Lu spoke, he tidied his robes and walked out. The two behind him saw that he was in good spirits. They couldn't help but look at each other and followed him out of the room. "Little brother Feng." Elder Lu knocked on the door and called out. However, no one answered. "Little brother Feng? Little brother Feng?" Elder Lu also knocked on the door, but no one answered. He couldn't help but say, "Strange, could he be sleeping so soundly?" "Masters, the young master of this room has already checked out and left." The waiter who went upstairs saw them gathered there and reported. "When did he leave?" The few of them were startled and asked in unison. "He left when the sun rose." The waiter paused, then said, "Oh, right, that young master also left a message, saying that we'll meet again if fate wills it." Hearing that, Elder Lu and the others had an indescribable feeling in their hearts. Why did he leave just like that? Old Master Lu sighed softly. "Along the way, I only called him Little Brother Feng. I didn't even manage to get his name out before I left. I don't know if I'll have the chance to see him again in the future. Don't worry, Master. We'll meet again if we're fated. Furthermore, I've already taken note of what he told me. I'll take care of Master's body." Elder Lu said slowly. Fortunately, he had left the prescription and taught him the acupuncture technique, so he did not have to worry too much about the patriarch's health. "It's just that we haven't had the chance to thank him properly." Old Master Lu still felt guilty in his heart. This illness was cured by him, but he didn't even receive the consultation fee or any gifts. If there's a chance in the future, it won't be too late to thank him," Elder Lu said with a smile. "Besides, I think we'll definitely meet again in the future." While they were talking about Feng on the other hand, Feng was walking around the market with the little white tiger in her arms. After much difficulty, she finally found a dairy goat. She couldn't help but squeeze it, and the goat's milk spurted out. She couldn't help but grin when she saw this. Quick, quick, suck it. Eat until you're full. She carried the little tiger in her arms and urged it to quickly drink the goat's milk. Although the little tiger looked silly, it was very cooperative. Its eyes darted around, and it immediately opened its mouth to gulp down the milk. After a while, its stomach was bloated. Chapter 1809. Fengjiu saw a large man running towards them, glaring angrily. She grabbed the tiger cub and wanted to run. Go, go! They're coming! Who would have thought that the little tiger cub would not let go of the ewe as if it hadn't had enough? Being hugged and pulled, it actually hurt the ewe as well. A sharp cry was instantly heard. Bah! Ewes' cries were usually gentle, but at this moment, there was a hint of sadness. The ewe wanted to retreat, but it couldn't. It could only bleat in pain. Bah! The tiger cub seemed to be very interested in the scene. It even mimicked the ewe and made a bleating sound, which made Fengjiu's face twitch. The moment the tiger cub opened its mouth, Fengjiu held it in her arms and quickly ran into the crowd. Brat, don't run. The large man behind them glared and scolded angrily. He looked back at his ewe and scolded it again. Then he led the ewe forward. Fengjiu stopped after running into an alley. After patting her chest, she couldn't help but be stunned. She patted her head and said, Really, why did I run? I could have just taken out the money and given it to him. I'm so stupid. But suddenly, the sound of a sheep's bleating came from her arms. Fengjiu was startled. She looked down and couldn't help but feel speechless. Ba, ba ba ba. The tiger cub seemed to have found something fun. It started to bleat like a sheep, wagging its tail excitedly. It even rubbed its head against Fengjiu's chest as if it was asking for praise. Ba your head. Fengjiu slapped the tiger's head. You're a white tiger. Why are you bleating like a sheep? Don't you have any ambition? The king of the forest bleating like a sheep? If your mother heard this, she'd be pissed. Bah! Still? She glared and raised her hand to hit the tiger cub. The tiger cub shrank back and looked at her innocently. Burp! It burped again. Seeing this, Fengjiu laughed. She reached out and rubbed its round belly. You're so full? Go play in the dimension. Then, seeing that there was no one around, she put the white tiger into the dimension. She straightened her clothes, then carried the medicine basket on her back and walked out of the alley. She wandered around the city, looking around. Treasure Trove Building? Fengjiu stood in front of an imposing and luxurious building. She looked up at the 3 large words on the building and then looked at the people walking inside. They were either cultivators or people in extraordinary clothes. Seeing this, she straightened her clothes and wanted to walk in as well. What are you doing? But before he could enter, he was stopped by someone. She pointed inside. Let's go in and take a look. Where do you think this place? You think anyone can just go in and look around? The guard at the door waved her away with a look of disdain. Are there rules here? She couldn't help but ask. She looked around again, but couldn't see anything special. Moreover, looking at the people who went in, other than their clothes being more luxurious, there was nothing special about them. You want to go in and take a look without knowing the rules? Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, I'll beat you up. The guard waved his fist in front of Fengjiu's face threateningly. Chapter 1810. However, before she could speak, she heard a voice behind her. Didn't I tell you to wait for me? Why did you leave so quickly? A gray-robed old man slowly walked over. After glancing at Fengjiu, he said to the guards, He came with me. So it's Elder Tan. The 2 guards recognized the old man and bowed. After glancing at Fengjiu, they retreated to the side. Fengjiu stood there in a daze and looked at the gray-robed old man strangely. Let's go, the old man said and walked in. Seeing this, she didn't say anything and followed him. It was just entering a building. She didn't expect it to be so troublesome. What kind of rules were there? Who was this old man? Why was he helping her? The Trove of Treasures building is a place for bartering. There aren't any rules for entering. It's just that some snobs are used to looking down on people. Seeing that you don't have anything on you and your clothes are plain, they won't let you in. The old man seemed to know what Fengjiu was thinking and slowly explained after entering. He stopped and looked at Fengjiu, then glanced at the medicine basket Fengjiu was carrying. You're a herb gatherer, right? If you want to see it, feel free to look around. This old man still has matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving first. He didn't ask for Fengjiu's name, nor did he tell Fengjiu who he was. He only turned and left after leaving behind his words. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and the corners of her lips curled into a smile. This old man was cold on the outside but kind on the inside. He was a stern old man, yet he was willing to help someone he didn't even know. She shook her head inwardly and walked in, intending to look around. A place for bartering? What good things could there be in here? He walked inside with some curiosity. When he got inside, he saw a lot of things displayed in transparent cabinets. Every item was labeled with what it was used for, and what it was to be exchanged for. It was clear at a glance. After walking around, she didn't find anything that caught her eye. However, when she was walking around, she noticed that there was a pair of eyes staring at her. That feeling of staring at a prey made her frown slightly. After coming here, she had kept a low profile. She had hidden her appearance and suppressed her cultivation. Now, in the eyes of outsiders, she was just a handsome young man. There were plenty of such people on the streets and they wouldn't attract much attention. Why would someone target her? She didn't look for the gaze that had landed on her. Instead, she walked to a counter that had some accessories and some ordinary magic tools. Let me take a look at this mirror, she said to a woman behind the counter. The woman only glanced at Fengjiu and handed the mirror over, saying, "This is a refractive mirror. It's more suitable for women to carry around. It's a mirror and also a magic tool that can refract sunlight to attack." Fengjiu used the mirror to check the person who was staring at her. Through the mirror, she saw an old man in embroidered clothes standing on the second floor staring at her. The gaze that looked like it was staring at a prey came from this old man. Chapter 1811. Yes, it's an upper-grade foundation building elixir, the woman said, deliberately emphasizing the word upper grade. Fengjiu smiled. Ordinary foundation building elixirs could be found everywhere in the aristocratic families of the upper continent. However, upper-grade foundation building elixirs had very few impurities and were even more precious. Ordinary alchemists could only produce one upper-grade foundation building elixir in 100 foundation building elixirs. Therefore, although this mirror was a magic tool, it was not worth it to exchange it for an upper-grade foundation building elixir. I want an upper-grade foundation building elixir, she said regretfully. She touched the mirror and handed it back. I don't have an upper-grade one. I only have a low-grade one. The woman smiled and took back the mirror without saying anything. She did not seem surprised. Fengjiu turned around and was about to leave when a middle-aged man came to her side. Little brother, please wait. Fengjiu looked at the man in front of her. He was obviously blocking her way with half of his body. This action made her a little unhappy, but she did not show it on her face. What's the matter? Hee, little brother, I'm the manager here. Can I have a word with you? The middle-aged man made a please gesture and wanted to take Fengjiu to the back. At this moment, the old man who came in with Fengjiu was about to leave. He caught a glimpse of this scene from the corner of his eye and his expression changed slightly. He immediately stepped forward and shouted at Fengjiu, "Didn't I tell you to follow me? Why are you running around after entering this place? You really don't know the rules." He hurriedly said to the middle-aged man, "Butler Wang, this is my grandnephew. If he offends you in any way, please don't take offense." The middle-aged man saw this and his eyes flashed slightly. He glanced at the second floor and then smiled at Elder Tan. So this little brother is Elder Tan's grandnephew. If there's nothing else, Butler Wang, we'll take our leave first. As he spoke, he cupped his hands and bowed, then motioned for Fengjiu to leave with him. Fengjiu didn't say anything when she saw this. She quietly followed behind the old man and left. When they were outside, she could still feel that the gray-clothed old man's body was tense. He seemed to be nervous. She followed them quietly and did not say anything. She left halfway because someone was following them. After walking through a few streets and entering an alley, they turned into a small courtyard. After closing the door, the gray-robed old man entered the house and let out a sigh of relief. Only then did he look at Fengjio with a frown. "Young man, are you from out of town?" "I just came down from the mountain," Fengjio said with an honest smile. The old man sized up Feng Nine. He saw that this young man was handsome and had a simple and honest appearance. In addition, his strength was only in the foundation establishment stage, and he was dressed simply. With just one look, he knew that he was not from an aristocratic family. It was no wonder that Steward Wang had his eyes on him. "That trove of treasures building is not a good place. Don't go there again." He then said, "If you're just passing by, leave this city as soon as possible to avoid any trouble." What kind of trouble? She could not help but be curious. Although nothing had happened, the old man seemed to be very worried that she would be taken away by Butler Wang. This made her curious. Why was she being watched? Also, why was she being watched? Chapter 1812. Fengjio followed him out. Only then did he notice that the courtyard was filled with herbs. Furthermore, there were some grinding tools in the courtyard. It seemed that this old man was a pharmacist. "Grandpa Tan, are you the only one in your house?" Fengjio looked around and saw that he seemed to be the only one in the courtyard. The old man replied as he arranged the herbs on the shelf, ignoring Fengjio. Fengjio sat down in the middle of the courtyard, one hand propping up his chin. His eyes darted around as he stared at the figure who was arranging the herbs with his back facing him. In his heart, he wondered if the Trove of Treasures building was doing some shady business in the dark? And who was that old man on the second floor at that time? "Why haven't you left yet?" After about an hour, the old man turned around and glanced at the youth sitting on the stairs in the courtyard. He frowned. "Why haven't you left yet?" "Leave where to?" Fengjio blinked and asked. "Back to your house," the old man said. Hearing this, Fengjio couldn't help but smile. His eyes narrowed into a line as he looked at the old man with a smile. "Grandpa Tan, didn't you say so? I'm your grandnephew. I came here this time to seek refuge with you." Hearing this, the old man was speechless for a while. This old man was saving you for you. Why did he still blame it on him? "Saving me? But I didn't see any danger." Fengjio smiled foolishly. When the old man heard this, he felt a lump in his chest. He didn't say anything else and only glanced at Fengjio before turning around and entering the room. Fengjio stood up and patted the dust off his green clothes as he followed behind the old man. "Grandpa, there are 2 rooms in this courtyard. Is this one for me to stay in?" She didn't stand on ceremony and pushed open the door to look inside. The room was neat and tidy, and everything needed was there. However, the room seemed to have been empty for a long time as the table was covered in a layer of dust. In the evening, at the stone table in the courtyard, the old man stared at the few dishes in front of him in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking. He glanced at Fengjio before picking up his chopsticks and eating with a straight face. "Grandpa, eat more." Fengjio gave the old man some food. Grandpa Tan was already a cultivator in the middle stage of the fairy realm. His strength was considered very strong. But why did he suppress his strength? This was just on a whim. She felt that this old man. Therefore, for the next 2 days, she slept until she woke up naturally during the day and went out to buy groceries. She also bought some goat's milk for the baby tiger. When she was free, she would go to the old man's stall to help look after it. To put it bluntly, she just sat there and watched the old man do business. After Grandpa Tan ground the spiritual herbs into powder, he mixed them into some commonly used medicinal powder and sold them at the medicine stall in the market. Occasionally, he would bring 1 or 2 bottles to the Trove of Treasures building to barter. On the day he met her, Grandpa Tan took the medicine to barter. However, after that day, he didn't go to the Trove of Treasures building for the next 2 days. Some people who were familiar with him saw that Grandpa Tan was the only one sitting at the stall with a straight face. Now, there was a handsome young man sitting beside him. They couldn't help but ask with a smile, "Grandpa Tan, who is this young man?" Chapter 1813. Uncle, do you want to buy 2 bottles of medicine to protect yourself? They're new medicines that were just ground today. There are all kinds. Feng Jiao asked with a smile. Hee, it's fine. I still have some from last time. The middle-aged man waved his hand and left. When Feng Jiao saw this, she propped her chin on her hand and looked at the busy market. Then, she looked at the old man beside her and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. She had been sitting here for half a day, but there wasn't a single person buying medicine. This kind of business was really bleak. Just then, her stomach grumbled. She glanced at the old man beside her and smiled embarrassedly. I'm a little hungry. Seeing this, Elder Tan took out a fruit from his sleeve and handed it to Feng Jiao. Eat. No need, no need. Grandpa, eat. Before she could finish speaking, the fruit was stuffed into her hand. She looked at the fruit in her hand and then looked at the old man who had already turned his head away. She couldn't help but smile and didn't refuse. Grandpa Tan, what do you want to eat tonight? Why don't we go to the street and buy a few kilograms of spiced beef to eat tonight? And a few kilograms of good wine? Before he could speak, Feng Jiao stood up. Since I have nothing to do, I'll go buy it now. I'll be back in a while. Feng Jiao walked to the street as she spoke. When Elder Tan saw this, he didn't say anything. He just sat there quietly and waited for the person who wanted to buy medicine to come to him. After leaving the stall, Feng Jiao's eyes flashed with a faint light. When she raised her head again, there was only clarity and honesty in her eyes. She turned a few corners and walked to the street. After buying a few kilograms of spiced beef, she was about to walk back when she saw Butler Wang, whom she had met once before, walk out of the crowd. Hee, little brother, what a coincidence. You're also here to buy spiced beef. Looking at the person walking in front of her with a smile and greeting her like an acquaintance, Feng Jiao couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth and grin. So it's Steward Wang. I haven't told you what I said last time, but you were taken away by Elder Tan. I've been thinking about it for the past 2 days. Butler Wang said with a smile. You have something to say to me? Feng Jiao blinked his eyes, his face full of innocence. Say it. I'm listening. There are a lot of people here, I wonder if... He smiled and pointed at an alley not far away. Sure. She responded with a smile and followed him into the alley. However, when they reached the alley, they smelled a faint fragrance. As soon as he smelled that fragrance, Feng Jiao's footsteps faltered. Why do I feel a little dizzy? She murmured as her body swayed and fell to the ground. Butler Wang looked at the youth on the ground and chuckled. He called out softly, Little brother? Little brother. When he saw that there was no movement, the smile on his face disappeared. He ordered the air, take him away. A man in black appeared out of nowhere. He was as fast as a ghost. He took out a sack and wrapped Feng Jiao in it, then carried him back. On the other side, Elder Tan sat and waited. However, he still didn't see Feng Jiao come back. He couldn't help but frown. Why was he gone for so long? Could something have happened to him? Chapter 1814. Brother Qingyi, right? He left after buying a few kilograms of beef. The shopkeeper said. Hearing this, Elder Tan thanked him and hurried back home. Who knew that when he reached home, the youth was nowhere to be seen? He couldn't help but frown. Where could he have gone? Could it be the Trove of Treasures building? Thinking of this, he shook his head. It shouldn't be, it's just a youth. Why would they still keep an eye on him after 2 days? Moreover, there's nothing unusual these 2 days. But if it wasn't them, who could it be? If he really fell into the hands of the Trove of Treasures building, I'm afraid. He muttered softly, looked at the sky and paced back and forth in the courtyard. He didn't have any evidence. Even if it was really the Trove of Treasures building who kidnapped him, they wouldn't admit it. Forcing his way in wouldn't work. He could only wait until the sky turned dark to investigate. Although the Trove of Treasures building was a place for bartering, there were also some shady dealings in the dark. Some clans and forces naturally knew a little, but due to the power of the Trove of Treasures building, no one dared to ask. And he had been here for so long, naturally he knew a thing or two. When he opened his mouth to let the youth enter the Trove of Treasures building, he didn't think too much, But he didn't expect that he would be targeted by the trove of treasures building. Thinking of how he had been alone for so many years, but the youth had been by his side these 2 days, and even cooked for him, these simple and not worth mentioning trifles, to an old man like him, it gave him a different feeling. After living in seclusion for so many years, he had no choice but to make a move now. He could only hope that the youth could hold on. On the other side, Fengjiu, who was covered in a gunny sack, had long opened her eyes. With her body that was immune to poison, how could a mere bone-softening smoke put her down? She only wanted to beat them at their own game, to see what the person who had been watching her for 2 days wanted to do. Accurately speaking, what did that luxuriously dressed old man want to do? The surroundings were quiet, but she could feel that there were many practitioners who had concealed their auras guarding. She closed her eyes in the gunny sack until she was thrown to the ground and the gunny sack was taken off. Only, the smell in the air didn't seem too good. It's this kid? There's nothing special about him. Why did Elder Feng have to capture him? There's no one that Elder Feng can't get his hands on. I wanted to catch this kid that day, but I let him go in the end. If I can't do it in the open, I'll do it in the dark. Anyway, I just have to bring him back to Elder Feng. Their voices drifted further and further away. Fengjiu rested for a while before opening his eyes. However, when he saw where he was, he couldn't help but be surprised. This was indeed a room, but it could also be said to be a cage. There was nothing in this room except for an iron cage made of black iron. Perhaps it was because there was no sunlight all year round, but there was a moldy smell inside, which was not very pleasant. At this moment, a few old men were seated in a circle at the top floor of the treasure-gathering pavilion. 3 of them looked at the old man in luxurious clothes with puzzlement and asked, "Elder Feng, what exactly is so special about that young man? You have to know that we are very careful when choosing people. Don't let any accidents happen." Chapter 18:15. It's just that even if we usually pick some people, it's extremely secretive. Moreover, most of their backgrounds are investigated thoroughly. Now, have you really sent people to investigate thoroughly? Will there be any problems? After all, we can't afford to be careless in this matter. As the old man spoke, he looked at Elder Feng. His eyes were still filled with unconcealable worry. The corners of Elder Feng's mouth twitched as he revealed a cold smile. This brat should have come from some countryside. However, he met Old Man Tan that day and Old Man Tan protected him, saying that he was his grandnephew. Hearing this, the few people looked at each other and asked, "So that means the kid is from the countryside and has never seen the world? There's no potential trouble?" In my opinion, that's the case. However, since you don't believe me, you can give it a try. Elder Feng sneered. "We're in the dark and he's in the light. Isn't it easy to observe a person?" Hearing this, the few people pondered for a while and couldn't help but ask, "What's so special about this kid? We don't need one more person, so why do we have to drag him in?" They were a little worried about having such an unknown person around. Didn't I say it? I believe my judgment of people is never wrong. Elder Feng glanced at them and said, "All right, let's leave it at that. Looking at the time, the kid should be awake. Let's go and take a look." Therefore, the few people followed him and left the top floor. Fengjiu, who was staying in the metal room, heard the footsteps outside. Her expression changed slightly, and the cunning and wisdom in her eyes disappeared. She blinked her silly eyes, and her face was filled with panic and fear. She hugged her legs with both hands and shrank into a corner. The door opened, and the few people who walked in saw the kid in the corner with panic and fear in his eyes. He clearly looked scared, but he was trying to be strong. He tried hard to calm down, but he didn't know that his trembling body had already revealed his helplessness and fear. Elder Feng, who came in, glanced at the few people beside him. His gaze seemed to say, "Look, didn't I say he's just a country kid? There's nothing to be afraid of." When they saw the expression and appearance of the young man huddled in the corner, they felt relieved. As long as there was no potential danger or trouble, everything else was fine. Who are you? Why do you want to capture me?" Fengjiu asked in a trembling voice, playing the role of a country bumpkin to perfection. His foundation establishment cultivation is a little weak among those people, an old man said, his gaze sweeping over Fengjiu's body. It doesn't matter. As long as we enter that place, no matter how weak we are, we will still be stronger than those outside. Another person said, That's true. We have prepared a lot of good things for this group of elites. Last time, there was a foundation establishment cultivator who killed a cultivator at the peak of the gold core stage. That really gave us a big surprise. The time given by the higher-ups is 1 year. We have to train them in 1 year. It's about time to start. Just like that, they stood in front of Fengjiu and discussed, as if they weren't worried that the young man would overhear the information in their conversation. Perhaps it was because they were confident that once they entered, it was impossible to leave. Chapter 1816. You've seen him. If you don't have any objections, get someone to take him away tomorrow. Elder Feng said to the people around him. All right. They nodded and turned to leave. The door closed again, leaving Fengjiu alone. Sensing that they had left, Fengjiu's eyes flickered. She pondered, what were they talking about? What elites? Who was the master behind the Endless Treasures Pavilion? From their words, she could tell that they didn't know her identity. Then, they didn't know why she was Fengjiu. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but be curious. Where would they take her tomorrow? That night, she didn't think too much about it. Anyway, no matter where she was, as long as she wanted to leave, she would definitely be able to leave. It was impossible for these people to trap her. After all, they would never have imagined that she was a peak sage immortal powerhouse. However, in the middle of the night, she opened her eyes in the darkness. Who was it? Why wasn't he sleeping and moving about on the roof in the middle of the night? At that moment, she didn't expect it to be Elder Tan. After all, she wasn't related to Elder Tan. She couldn't have imagined that Elder Tan would risk exposing his strength and cultivation to sneak into Endless Treasures Pavilion at night. She closed her eyes, but no longer felt sleepy. She quietly lay on the wall and waited for dawn. However, after about half an hour, a faint voice came from the roof of the house she was in. Kid. When she heard that voice, Fengjiu was slightly startled. She raised her head in astonishment. Grandpa Tan. With the help of the night sky above, she saw the person lying on the roof. It was Elder Tan. Wait here, I'll get you out. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Tan, who was lying on the roof, left. Not long after, he pushed open the front door and entered. Elder Tan frowned when he saw the scene inside. He didn't say anything and was about to break the lock. Unexpectedly, Fengjiu stopped him at that moment. Wait! Fengjiu stepped forward to stop him. She looked at the old man in front of her and sighed inwardly. Grandpatan, hurry up and leave. I'm fine here. You don't have to save me. Do you know what you're saying? If I don't save you, it won't be long before you die. Elder Tan said with a straight face. He wanted to open the lock, but he realized that it was a black iron lock. Without a key, even a sword couldn't cut it open. I know. Fengjiu revealed a smile. This smile was different from his usual simple and honest one. It was a shrewd and cunning smile. I saw that they had their eyes on me, so I played along and came in to take a look. I just didn't expect Grandpa Tan to find me. Looking at the shrewd and cunning expression of the young man locked in the iron room, Elder Tan was slightly startled. You. That's why I said it's okay. When I don't want to stay here anymore, I'll naturally leave. I can protect myself. Grandpa Tan, you don't have to worry about me. She smiled as she spoke. Her voice paused for a moment before she continued. Grandpa Tan, you should hurry and leave before they find out. Tomorrow they will transfer me. I want to see what kind of place this treasure trove building is. Elder Tan looked at Fengjiu with a complicated expression and finally asked, Have you really decided to stay here? Fengjiu nodded. He smiled and narrowed his eyes. Since I have nothing to do, I'll take a look. Chapter 1817. Not long after Elder Tan left, 2 men in black came in. They glanced at Fengjiu, who was in the metal room, and went forward to open the black iron lock of the metal room. They went forward and directly put a black bag on Feng Jiu's head, took her, and walked out. In the dark, Elder Tan watched and sighed softly. In the end, he shook his head and quietly left, his figure disappearing into the night. Feng Jiu only felt that she was being pushed by the two men. She couldn't see clearly and didn't know where she was being taken until she was brought into a transportation array by the two men. Because of the dense spiritual aura of the array, even if she couldn't see, she could feel it. She was even more surprised. Did this treasure trove building have a transportation array? Wasn't it just moving her to another place? Why did they need to use a transportation array? Although she was surprised, she didn't say anything. These two men were only in charge of escorting her. Even if she asked, it would be a waste of time. Her arms were held by the two men in black. Under a strong suction force, even if she couldn't see, she could feel the world spinning. Her feet didn't touch the ground, as if she had entered a transportation space. After spinning for a while, her feet stepped on the ground again. What hit her in the face was a different aura. It was the smell of blood, a bloodthirsty and ferocious aura. She heard the sound of swords clashing and a low shout. The black bag over her head was removed and she saw the scene in front of her clearly. It was a huge square. The ground was covered with yellow sand, without any green leaves or grass. There were a few iron cages around the square, in which were sleeping ferocious beasts. At the side of the square, there were a few men sitting on the ground. Some of those people were teenagers, some were young men in their 20s, and some were men in their 30s. There were all kinds of people, but they all had the same vigilance and ruthlessness. When she suddenly appeared here, those people narrowed their bloodthirsty eyes and sized her up. Then they coldly looked away. "Go!" The two black-clothed men beside her pushed her, and she could only follow them. With a face full of fear, she followed the two black-clothed men around the square to a house behind the mountain. It was a simple and crude house, but it was the best place to be. Other than the few powerful demonic cultivators guarding outside the house, the people inside the house seemed to have unfathomable strength. "Elder Ghost, there's a new kid." The two men in black who were escorting her stood respectfully outside the door and saluted. Without the permission of the people inside, they didn't even dare to enter. "Didn't you say it's about time? Why did you send someone here?" An enigmatic voice came from inside. The voice was soft and feminine, but it made people's hearts tremble like a venomous snake. Replying to Senior Gui, Senior Feng asked me to bring him here. He said that this fellow is simple and honest. If he is properly trained, he might be of great use. "Really? Bring it in and let me have a look." The voice came from inside again, and Feng Jiu was dragged in by the two men. After entering, Feng Jiu swallowed her saliva. Her body trembled slightly, and her face was pale as she looked at the person lying on the soft couch. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s or 50s. However, his body was thin and small, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. Even his face was thin and long, with a mix of green and white. He looked very weak. Chapter 1818. In the embrace of this cold, tall, and skinny middle-aged man, there was currently a half-naked enchanting woman. The woman meekly nestled beside him. Her body was exposed, but she was not afraid of the gazes of others. Instead, under the teasing of Elder Ghost's hands, she even let out a low moan. The two black-clothed men who came in didn't dare to raise their heads. They didn't even dare to look, as if they were afraid that they would get into trouble. As for Feng Jiu, her face was pale as she stared blankly. Her gaze carried just the right amount of fear. No matter how one looked at it, she was a young man who was so scared that he didn't know how to react. Seeing the ghost elder's bloodthirsty eyes move around her body and size her up, she didn't move at all. She only swallowed her saliva. Where is this? I want to go home." "Go home? Pa." The ghost elder seemed to have heard something funny and let out a sinister laugh. "After entering the palace of the King of Hell, you are all little ghosts under my command. Go home." How wishful thinking. When the sinister voice fell, he suddenly flicked his hand and a stream of air landed on Feng Jiu's body. In that instant, Feng Jiu instinctively wanted to attack, but she still forcibly endured it. Because the stream of air landed on her body, she instinctively let out an sound. She opened her mouth slightly and the ghost elder flicked a pill into her mouth. She clutched her throat with both hands and made an appearance as if she wanted to vomit the medicine out. The moment she lowered her head, bent her waist, and opened her mouth to vomit, she caught a glimpse of the waist tag that Elder Ghost dropped on the ground. When she saw the waist tag, her pupils shrank, and in almost an instant, she covered up the abnormality in her eyes. Take him out. The people outside will teach him the rules. The ghost elder waved his hand and said. He narrowed his eyes and no longer paid attention to them. Instead, he teased the woman in his embrace, causing her to laugh. When they arrived outside, the two black-clothed men pushed Fengjiu onto the plaza and turned around to report back. When the two people left, Fengjiu pretended to cough and spat out the pill under her tongue and put it away. Although she didn't eat it, she knew that it was the poison that controlled these people. Although her body was immune to poison, it was best not to eat this kind of thing. Moreover, she also wanted to research what kind of poison it was. She walked on the plaza. Because the sky wasn't very bright, the light wasn't very good. In addition, these people's faces were either covered in mud or dried blood, so she couldn't see their faces too clearly. However, what was certain was that none of them were easy to provoke like wild animals. Their eyes gave off a bloodthirsty aura. It was as if they would pounce on her if she dared take one step closer and they would tear her. Finding an empty corner, she curled up into a ball and hugged her legs as she looked around and the people around her. Looking at this scene and then at these people, she suddenly understood where she was. However, in this place, other than those people who were devil cultivators, the majority of the people here weren't devil cultivators like her. Moreover, when she glanced at the waist tag, she saw the words, Temple of Darkness, engraved on it. Chapter 1819. In the darkness of the night, a blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out. Immediately after, she, who was sitting in a corner, saw two devil cultivators dragging a man who was on the verge of death over and pushing an iron cage to the center of the square. She saw that the man's shoulder had been slashed, and fresh blood kept flowing. He was pressed to the ground by two devil cultivators, who used a dagger to cut off the back of his foot. A mournful scream rang out once again, breaking the silence of the night. The two devil cultivators pushed the man who had his foot cut off into the cage that held the ferocious beast. Immediately after, under the gazes of the surrounding people, the ferocious beast in the cage tore the man apart, and the man's mournful and sharp screams, the bloody scene of the internal organs being hollowed out happened just like that in front of them. The surroundings were so quiet that not a single sound could be heard. Only the heavy breathing of those who saw this scene could be heard. This is the result of running away. Take a good look and remember it well. Once you're here, don't even mention the fact that you can't escape from our palms. Even if you can't escape from this place. The devil cultivator's fierce voice carried a strong warning as it spread through the air, clearly entering everyone's ears. Seeing everyone's stiff expressions, the two devil cultivators snorted and turned to leave, leaving only the bloody scene in the iron cage that held the ferocious beast. As the sky gradually brightened, several devil cultivators followed behind Elder Ghost and walked over. They only stopped when they reached the center of the square. The ghost doctor's cold gaze swept across everyone in the square, and only then did his voice ring out. Everyone gather here. As soon as the voice rang out, everyone consciously stood up and walked to the front. The bloody cage in the middle of the square had already been moved to the side. Fengjiu also walked forward with those people. However, among the nearly 400 people, she probably looked the thinnest and smallest. She couldn't squeeze to the front, so she could only stand at the back and listen. Some of you have been here for 3 or 4 months, and some of you have just entered. There are a total of 378 of you, and there are those who are in their teens to 30s. Then, do you know why you were captured here? Elder Ghost's sinister voice rang out in the square, but no one spoke. They all quietly listened and watched. You don't know? If you don't know, I'll tell you. His voice suddenly became vicious as he shouted in a low voice. Among the 378 of you, Only the one who survives will be qualified to become a spy for the Temple of Darkness. You are the spies that we want to infiltrate the 4 great sects. Are you wondering why I told you that you're a spy for the 4 major sects? Ha! Elder Gui laughed sinisterly. That's because we don't need too many spies. We'll have rounds of death and elimination. You won't be able to escape from here. If you don't want to die, then you can only fight. You can only try your best to think of a way to survive. Otherwise, what awaits you will only be a hair-raising death. I believe that after seeing the way the eliminated person died, you all would definitely not wish for the eliminated person to be yourselves. Feng Jiu, who was standing at the back of the crowd, couldn't help but frown when he heard this. Elimination by death? A spy sent to the 4 major sects? What was the Temple of Darkness trying to do? Chapter 1820. The newcomer, come over here. Once Elder Ghost's voice came out from the front, everyone followed his line of sight and landed on the skinny youth in green clothes at the very back. In their eyes, this youth was the weakest among all of them. Feng Jiu, who was standing at the very back, saw everyone's gazes land on him. He hesitated for a moment before walking forward with some fear. Perhaps it was because of Elder Ghost's words, but the people blocking the way all moved to the side to make a path for him. What are you doing? Feng Jiu asked with a trembling voice. He looked at Elder Ghost with a very weak expression and his legs trembled slightly. Nothing. Elder Ghost narrowed his small eyes and revealed a sinister sneer. You look like a soft-footed shrimp, but that old thing still brought you in. Since it's like this, I naturally have to treat you a little differently. When everyone heard this, they all had different expressions. No one knew what they were thinking. Feng Jiu waved his hand and suppressed the fear on his face. He said embarrassedly, No, you don't have to treat me special. I'll be the same as everyone else. This old thing, with his sinister smile, it was obvious that he was up to no good. Elder Ghost narrowed his eyes and stared at Feng Jiu. He laughed sinisterly. Wait until you pass this stage. This death elimination will start with you. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and a ferocious beast appeared beside him. Roar! It was a ferocious beast at the peak of the holy beast level. It was ferocious and was called the demonic corroding tiger. It was different from the commonly seen tiger species. This demonic corroding tiger's fur was as hard as iron. 2 sharp tiger fangs that were about the length of a finger protruded from its mouth. There were 3 red patterns on the left and right sides of the tiger's face. Its bloodthirsty eyes revealed a ferocity that made one's heart tremble. This was Elder Ghost's contracted beast, a ferocious beast that was only 1 step away from becoming a divine beast. Now, he had summoned it just like that. When everyone saw this ferocious beast, their eyes flashed and they could not help but take a few steps back. They stared at the demonic corroding tiger in a defensive manner. Elder Ghost had suddenly summoned this demonic corroding tiger. Even the strongest person among them would find it difficult to fight this ferocious beast alone. However, at this moment, some people's gazes fell on Feng Jiu with complicated expressions. They saw that the green-clothed youth standing at the front had a confused expression. His body trembled and his face was pale as he stared with his eyes and mouth wide open as he stared at the ferocious beast that had suddenly appeared in front of him. He did not know whether he was scared or not, as he did not know how to retreat. Or not. The ghost elder squinted his eyes and rubbed the head of the corroding demon tiger beside him. His eyes, however, stared at Feng Jiu sinisterly. Go, bite off this brat's leg. As soon as she finished speaking, the corrosive devil tiger let out a ferocious roar. Its entire body shot forward, its mouth wide open, revealing its sharp, bloodthirsty fangs as it pounced towards Feng Jiu. Feng Jiu stared blankly. She stared blankly until she heard Elder Ghost's words. When she saw the majestic and ferocious corroding devil tiger roar and pounce at her with its mouth wide open and its fangs bared, she let out a sharp and panicked scream as if she was frightened. Ah! Her voice was sharp and ear-piercing. It carried with it the pressure of a Foundation establishment cultivator. It suddenly rang out and pierced through everyone's eardrums while they were still in shock. Their eardrums hurt and their hearts suddenly jumped. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.